what was it? The Scorpions. Remember the album cover with the crazy guy with the fork in the eyes?
Oh, yeah.
You know this?
Vaguely, yeah. It's been a while since I rocked like a hurricane, Jamie.
That's exactly the video. Wrecked him. Damn near killed him.
That was popular in medical school, that joke.
What's the preamble to the joke? Do you know? I've always wondered.
Just somebody says the word rectum. That's pretty much it.
I thought it was more specific than that, so I'm glad to know that it's just a punchline. The joke is the punchline.
Medical students are not that smart, contrary to popular belief. This is the Heartache Connoisseur Podcast. With me today, I have Jamie Hopkins. He's a radio man. He is a musician. He's the father of my video guy. And he's a friend. And we're glad he can. And he's really good with his mouth in so many ways. So,
not the ways you're thinking of.
No, well, I'm a psychiatrist, you know. So we're here to talk about God knows what. We're going to just take off down the mountain and see where we roll.
Well, I'm super glad to be here because sometimes a good space helps things along, like a good cup of coffee.
Well, we try here
and
at
the
the Heartache.
space is really cool. Like, congratulations on the new space. This wall thing that doesn't show the corner, what's that called?
It's called an infinity wall, is my understanding.
Did you make that up, or is that an industry thing?
That is something that a millennial, your son, told me about a month or so ago, and he said, you really need one of those. I said, what's that? And he said, you know, in the Matrix, when Neo asks for guns and they slide up and it looks like he's standing in heaven, like that thing.
Okay.
I'm like, well, that's a good idea.
Huh. So you could like green screen us out? Like, and we could be a floating table?
You know, I really have no idea what's possible with this technology nowadays.
Well, it's a cool feature. And then the table. Can I ask you about the table? Because this is a cool table.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a woodworker. When my first marriage started to go bad, I really got into woodworking because I could stay at home and go to the garage, which was like being gone.
Yeah.
But then if the kids needed something, I was still there. So thank you, honey, for turning me on to woodworking. But no, this is a table I built here. I finished it recently, and it's made of a combination of walnut and cherry with some kind of cherry-colored stain, and I left the live edge here. I don't know if that's on camera or not, but you can see the bark. But yeah, I'm proud of this one. It turned out really well. I'm happy. My dad was a woodworker, and he kind of inspired me that way. And it's just, you know, when you work with your brain and your mouth all day, you want to, I don't know, touch wood. Does that sound right? I'm sorry. We got to behave ourselves.
No, I really like that. First of all, I like that it's a creation, so I'm very into creation. I like that it's well done in some places and purposefully kind of like blemished in other places. I think that's cool.
Like a human being.
Yeah, you're kind of a metaphor guy, so yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me.
Thanks.
I think you're an interesting bird because you know, you're a psychiatrist, and I mean, you're a doctor, and you're a doctor of medicine, and you're an agent of big pharma and all those sorts of things, but then also like woodworking and talking through and communicating through some of the stuff that people all deal with and struggle. You know, that's a craft. I don't know. I just find you an interesting guy, a musician, but also like this doctor, and not just a doctor of prescribing medicine, but a doctor of kind of wanting to get to the root of things for people. I've heard you say that before. Yeah,
that's something I had to kind of come to on my own. I was trained at the University of Iowa, which is a fabulous psychiatry training program. However, it's heavily oriented toward medications and prescribing and psychopharmacology and understanding mental illness from a biological perspective, which has all kinds of merit. Don't get me wrong. However, when you choose that as your main focus, you lose sort of the tradition of psychotherapy, and we don't talk a lot about. People might be surprised to learn, you know, we don't sit around talking about Freud and Jung in psychiatry training. We talk about Prozac and you know, Haldol. But in my later years, as my career's progressed, I've realized there's really no way to understand people without that. Like, you have to bring the psychoanalyst perspective and the cognitive therapy perspective. You have to bring all that into the equation with the science to get the whole picture, in my opinion. And I find it tremendously fascinating. So thank you for noticing that. That's an astute observation there, sir.
Well, I'm from the other sort of, I'm not credentialed at all. And so I kind of grew up, my dad's kind of a tough guy. And so my thing always was, you can probably get yourself to an emotionally healthy space by gritting it out to some degree, and then also by focusing on, all the people that have it worse than you do, and sort of like self-processing or processing with my wife or my close friends to help me get the rough stuff out so that I can get to an operating level. And I think that that's great. But as I've gotten older, I've realized there is a biological component, and I could probably use some of that sometimes. And so I think what I hear you saying is, you're from the medicine side, and then you've kind of gotten to become more connected with how the more counseling side
Sure,
of things,
the psychological or the spiritual, all those elements.
Yeah, so I'm more like, counseling side, and then maybe some medicine is needed, and you're kind of medicine side, but counseling maybe is part of it. But the idea that you're not offended by the other discipline. I mean,
no.
How many
why would you be?
chiropractors are offended by, medical doctors don't like chiropractors, and chiropractors don't like traditional medicine, and like I don't like those silos
Those
at all.
are all just pissing contests,
But I'm saying your industry would want to do that. When you go to the national, the big get together, when all the doctors get together, they're not talking about how they can incorporate more counseling and more, emotionally connected content into the therapy of their patients, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. And what you said, I think it's important. I always refer back to that worldview in my work a lot. It's what I call the bootstraps mentality.
I've heard you say that, bootstraps.
And it does have its merit. It's sort of what we Midwesterners, maybe Americans in general, but especially kind of what I call the Judeo-Christian Midwestern work ethic, which is, if you go to a shrink, you're either weak or crazy, and you should just pull yourself up. And it works for a while. And then most people at some point hit some kind of a wall with that, and they just can't make sense. Like, they could pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but why? Like, what's the point? That's the question then that starts to leak in. And then you kind of got to go through a shift in your worldview. And ultimately, I think healthy people come back around to, I got to get myself out of bed every day. I got to put one foot in front of the other. But you maybe get to a place where you're doing that because you genuinely love your fellow man, and not because that's what you should do. That's really what that transition looks like, is you get to a place where you're doing that out of a sense of deep responsibility for the place you live, and realize, I'm one of the old guard now. The people who trained me, they're dying, or they're irrelevant, and it's our turn now to sort of take what we know and try to deliver it to our kids and to anybody that's interested. I mean, it's a broken world, man. Like, there's no arguing that point. And so that's really what I'm trying to do with all of this. It's not a vanity project. I feel it's really just sort of a way to share. I see myself as having been put in a really unique position in that I get to watch the human condition unfold in extremely intimate ways. I had no idea what I was getting into. And most people never get to see that repetitive thing and get the patterns figured out in their mind as to what humans do, like, over and over again. But to gain that knowledge and hopefully be able to deliver that and help people just simply see some of their own patterns, so.
Well, I love the curiosity that's one of the reasons that I like you as a friend. So, like, you write songs, and the lyrics that you write are a proof that you're an introspective and curious person. You're not walled off. I'm trying to be that way too. I think this podcast, where we don't have anything rehearsed, we're just going to try to, I don't know, offer something interesting based on our insights. Like, I love that level of curiosity.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, let me ask you something. I mean, what we're doing here, I mean, we're just a couple of red-blooded dudes out in the middle of the flyover country here, with cameras and microphones that we ordered off Amazon.com, and this is available to the whole world. You're in radio. You broadcast to a large area, but not as much as YouTube. I mean, of course, you can put it online and
Right.
such. But what do you think about this form of media? I mean, this is the Wild West, is it not?
Yeah, I have a friend who he's the guy that I make most of the music with, and he's super deep into music, and he can just narrate what's going on at a really deep level with music. And as he's telling me, a radio show that maybe we could do together, where maybe we put his show on once a week, and he's talking about these deep cuts over live concerts that he's recorded over time, and the idea of he hasn't even heard them. He just knew that they would be good. Well, pulling out these archives and listening to them at the same time that you're listening to them, and then maybe talking through why he connected to it and decided to record it and what he's experienced. So that would make a decent radio show, but it would make an amazing podcast, because the people in my terrestrial radio audience that would connect to that, let's say it's 5%. 5% would really dig that. Well, 5% of YouTube
is massive.
And you can find all those 5% that really gravitate towards that content. And that's the amazing thing about podcasting. You can find another guy that thinks like you do, invite him as a guest, and then you deep dive about whatever the thing you like about that person's content is. So I love this format, and I don't see it as a threat to what I do in the radio business, because my job in the radio business is primarily to meet the needs of my local market.
Sure.
This is not meeting the needs of the local market. This would be meeting the needs of those small percentages of people all over the country that might connect with what we're talking about.
Sure. No, that's an excellent take. I mean, it's really two different jobs ultimately.
Yeah.
Different form of service.
But the way so what I like the most about spending time with you is that, we can draw lines of comparison. So me in the radio business is not too much different than you making furniture or you creating a podcast, or honestly, the way that I suspect that we both connect to music. Like it's a creation and an expression of the things that we're most personally interested in. It is one thing.
It's all one thing. I mean, hopefully as you become more integrated as a person, that's the technical term is like kind of, it's frequently referred to as it's sort of becoming whole, where all your parts begin to sing in unison. Or maybe you might think of it as like trying to get everybody rowing in time, where, that woodworker in me and that psychiatrist piece and that father romantic part, like all those things are in harmony. And I'm not a different person in any of my environments. I really am. I'm the same person in any location. Hopefully that's the ideal anyway.
Right.
And the only way you get there is you have to be really super honest with yourself about who you are, what you like to do, why it matters, why you're doing it, and become intentional about it, and begin to do things on purpose that you're driven to do deep within you. And that's how you find yourself. That's how you find integration. And that's, I think, what you're talking about. Like, I'm doing things, you're doing things, all of which line up with who I am at my deepest levels,
I think my internal voice calls it like lowest common denominator.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So good feeling, bad feeling. It used to be the things that I did at work would produce some good feelings and some bad feelings, and you do more of the things that produced good feelings, but they were compartmentalized within the work model. And then I would go have a band gig, and I would experience things that were good things and try to do more of those. And the older that I got, I started to realize that, good things didn't have to be compartmentalized within each category.
Right.
And so kind of like good things, bad things, that's the integration that you're talking about. When I experience a good thing on the bandstand, it's the same like slight tick as the good thing at work. And I'm just like rowing, the music guy is rowing at the same kind of consistency as the radio station work guy. And so hopefully those strokes all are more meaningful. So there's more of the good things in general. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Totally. No, exactly. It really does. And I think that's something that takes a while to learn. Like what you said, when you're younger, it's kind of, I'm going to go to work and do something I don't really want to do very much to earn money, to do the things that I want to do. And that works for a while, but ultimately that just gets so tiring. It's like I'm making someone else's dreams come true for 8 or 10 hours, and then I'm trying to squeeze in, and that's not very sustainable. I mean, it burns you out. So where you're trying to get to a place where your work and your home and your personal and your recreational and all of those things. And you mentioned like good moments, bad moments. Well, a way to redefine that as you age too is realizing that everything has good and bad moments, and that but you have to look. If you go into your job saying this sucks, I hate it, I don't want to be here, it's going to suck and you're going to hate it and you're not going to want to be there. If you go into it, like let's say in your case, I wonder what I can learn today about radio, or I wonder what I can discover about the people I work with, or I wonder if there's something new about music that I haven't thought of that I might be able to bring into my mental life. I mean, then everything changes. Then you're doing what the ancients called like walking in the Tao, where you're, it's one foot in front of the other, and you're in the moment, and you're noticing the smells and the textures and the sounds and everything all around you, and everything becomes rich at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's how you make it. Everybody's trying to get somewhere, Mm-hmm. If I can just save up enough money to play golf in Phoenix, right. then I'm done. And I'm like, well, even that's going to suck.
And that's
eventually.
That's not unlike, so I go to spend time in my music community with my musician friends. And I know a couple of bands who they don't like each other, but they're all running to the stage to be popular and important in those hours, disconnected from one another and having their own sort of agendas. And then I'm not sure that their home lives are much better because I see that they're running to this thing. Whereas what I'm trying to say is I'm going to assume 100 bad things are going to happen during this gig tonight. So I'm going to make 150 good things happen, and it's going to be a net 50 good things.
Exactly.
Whereas I used to be, I got to get out of this work day. This work week sucks. I'm going to go have fun on the bandstand. Mm-hmm. Well, it never was that. It never was just fun. It was always a bunch of bad things. So if you see those things honestly, like you're talking about, then you can do a much better job of filtering and making some decisions within that.
Right. Those highs are fleeting, and you have to accept that those moments of genuine deep perfection where everything's firing on all cylinders and the band sounds great and the crowd's into it, and you're playing that part of the bridge, it just makes your innards contract. That's only occasionally does that happen, and that's okay, and that's why it's so amazing when it happens. If it happened all the time, I mean, this is a simple law of contrast. You can't draw on a white piece of paper with a white crayon, or you don't see anything. Mm-hmm. There has to be polarity of experience for you to understand the depth and the meaning of it.
Yeah. I think where I used to make a mistake with that was I was too impatient with my kids when they were younger, and I was usually trying to like punch the clock and make that time be whatever I had to do to make it till I could go do the next thing that I perceived as fun. And as an older person, what I would do now in that same situation is, reduce my ego, reduce my need to leave, and to spend enough time there to find the good things that were in there.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly right.
And I only say that because kids are that element in people's lives where it doesn't matter what you want, their needs are the most important thing. And if you as a parent have committed to that premise, then, it's not going to be very much fun. And, when you punish the child, spend the time with the child during that punishment, which is not good time for you, and it's twice as expensive to punish if that's how you have to do it. But there are opportunities as an older person, if I could inform my younger self, to say there's something in there, like settle down until you find that something.
I had this image come to mind. It's sort of like you can imagine, let's imagine a greenhouse tender or a gardener or something, and they're just pissed.
Wait, Tinder or a greenhouse?
No, not like your Tinder account. No, you're married and I'm engaged, but the Tinder, not that. You're the guy that looks after the plants.
I see.
And you're pissed off that they need water. Like that's your fundamental headspace. And, meanwhile, you're surrounded by all these amazing blooming, like miracles of creation that took millions of years to become this thing. And like, you're like, I have to get water for them.
Right.
They need water and this sucks. Like that's what it's like, where you just don't see what's right in front of you.
And I'm also realizing that watering the plants is totally not instant gratification. That's instant kind of pain in the butt.
Right.
But the green space around you. So if while you're watering the plants, you can admire what happened when you watered the plants last month and all the times before that you watered the plants, you're enjoying what the watering has done to help offset. You wish you didn't have to water today, but you can understand that a month from now you'll enjoy them all the more, or, continue to enjoy them.
Yeah, you have to make peace with the mundane. You do. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to really just say the plain, simple things are my friend, and everybody has to do that. I don't care if you're a celebrity or a billionaire. You still, you got to eat, you got to crap, you got to get dressed, you got to go to work, or whatever. You got to walk to your pool, the same pool you've looked at. Okay, you ain't 8 pools. Well, I'm tired of these 8 swimming pools. It's
Johnny Depp has like all these houses that he's bought over time because that bridge that used to give you the tickle in the middle, it doesn't anymore.
Right.
And you got to buy another house to make that tickle if you're Johnny
this
Depp.
private island again? Oh my
right.
God. Jeez.
No, you're totally right. And so the word that mundane is right. When I said earlier, good feelings and bad feelings, bad feelings aren't as rare as mundane feelings. But if you decide mundane feelings are bad feelings, then it's going to be bad your whole day.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And the thing, the strange kind of unpredictable paradox of all of it is that the mundane then transforms into beauty. And the mundane starts to become a thing unto itself that you begin to look forward to. Like I have this ritual every morning where, I get up and I make coffee and I sit on the couch and I read with Shelley, and we talk about what we're reading, and it's super simple. It's not a night out to the opera or to a rock concert. It's just, but man, I look forward to that more than almost anything. And it's just it's the coffee and the conversation and this person I care about and the rhythm of it. The rhythms matter, and it's getting in sync with something, And you look around and you're like, well, this whole world is dictated by rhythms. There's seasons, there's phases of the moon, there's the sun rises and sets, and animals, hibernate and come to life, and we have that in us. And if we agree with it and just allow it to be, then we find that we're sort of in the flow. We're flowing down the river instead of trying to walk upstream, which just takes way more work.
Yeah, I like that, and it also means like the getting together at that same time is so more and more as fragmented as we get. Now it's like, okay, I can get together with you Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but Tuesday, Tuesday and Friday, I'm going to be downstairs working out. So if you begin to build consistency in that meeting at the same time, then what you do in the meeting. So now the meeting at the same time is the mundane. So as you spend time and get comfortable in that mundane same time of meeting, you make it more interesting by the things that you discuss in that meeting. Mm-hmm. Instead of, I have to do something different all the time. Well, what if you do the same thing all the time, and then within that same thing, you begin to find ways to make it different and more interesting? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I stumbled onto podcasts. I used to drive and consume a lot of music, and so now what I want to do is drive and consume funny stuff from people that I relate to, and I can find that on podcasts more than I can, frankly, in local terrestrial radio.
Right.
Love radio, but my job is to serve the group that listen to us, not to serve the things that I like the most.
No, I know.
So podcasting is where you can really find those people that you identify the most closely with, and so I'm taking that consistent time of listening to podcasts, and then I'm varying it up to make it more exciting or less exciting, but I have reserved the time. So I like what you're saying. You reserve the time with her, and so you can spend that time in more interesting and different ways to make it more meaningful.
And sometimes I'll even think strategically about how to make it more interesting. It's like, I wonder if I can make her laugh today, or how much I can make her laugh. I wonder if there's something I don't know about her that I might be able to figure out how to ask about. There's always little things you can do to make those moments more interesting, and that's called creativity. Mm-hmm. And so what happens when you make peace with the mundane, that sort of gives the fertile soil then for ideas to come up.
Yeah.
Because you're not always trying to get somewhere else. You're living in the moment, and you don't have to be anywhere, or you don't feel like you do. And then ideas come, creations and things that inspires you.
You asked me before this if there's anything I wanted to talk about, so I kind of wanted to say music, because I never process. I'm playing a lot, but I never process the music that we're making with people that I like a lot. So music is cool. And maybe I could draw a comparison here between the mundane and what you're talking about and trying to make it more special with my musical life. So I was always into. Is that okay?
Sure, no, dude. Yeah, remember this is a podcast. We do whatever we want.
But you were clear that I needed to follow your directions at all times, so I didn't
You
know
know,
if
the
this was
most
part of that.
important thing in life is controlling those around you as much as possible. That's been the message so far, I think.
Yeah, if we can help people understand just what we know, everything.
If you're
will
not
be
doing
better.
what I want, then you're wrong. No, go ahead.
Okay, so drums, right? So I got involved with drums as a young guy. My dad was a drummer, and my favorite drummers were the flashy drummers, the Neil Peart, and then I kind of got into jazz.
Tommy Lee, did you like Tommy Lee?
I do want to come back to that, but Tommy Lee and Neil Peart, as far as I'm concerned,
No,
are
it's a different.
yes, different thing. But what I'm talking about is I wanted to learn gymnastics on the drums, and then I wanted to play it in front of people who would love gymnastics on the drums. And so I used to do gymnastics on the drums in bands on stages to people that didn't know how to dance to it. So ultimately I was not helping myself. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot better as a musician when the boom and the crack became the most important thing. Mm-hmm. That's pretty mundane.
Exactly right. This is a perfect metaphor.
And when I decided to fall into the mundane, there's so many intricacies within the 2 and the 4 that can make it stiff and forward, or fat and lazy, or soft or
dynamic.
Loud. Yeah, man. And so it's almost like when I settled down with reconciling boom and crack as the way to make an audience respond. Then a whole new world of development came, because within that context, there's so many things that aren't gymnastics that can affect an audience and get them dancing. And ultimately, there's connection there. So you and her sit down at a consistent time. You find interesting things to talk about, and you're connected. If I understand that boom and crack is the best way to play on the bandstand, I'm instantly more connected with the audience who can relate to what I'm playing. Mm-hmm. So
give the people what they want. But no, you're exactly right. I think that I've done a number of different recordings over the years and played with drummers that were, that overplayed and were trying to show off and everything. And then I've had an opportunity not terribly long ago to do some work with a session drummer, and I noticed that this guy's drum beats, I mean, they were so simple, except when the subtleties that he was using were things that you could never teach somebody, that you could only either be born with that gift or learn that from experience. And that was eye-opening to me. I'm like, this guy he doesn't need to be seen here, like he's not trying to be noticed. He's just trying to help this guy communicate his song adequately, mm-hmm. and properly, and not do anything more. So I understand, and it's really true with really any instrument. It's true with songwriting. You don't need to use big words when understandable and straightforward language will do the job.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
And so I've played with you a few times, and you don't do anything complicated. It's not your bag. It doesn't even seem like it's something that you want to be your bag. You like the simplicity. And I like to play drums with artists that are writing driven. So most of the people that I play with are original bands. And even if it's not all original on a night we play somewhere, there's usually original music involved. Because I want to experience I want to take their creation, and I want to see if I can create around it that is something that makes the creation better. And this is a long-winded way of me asking you if I could play on your record.
Well, you know what? Absolutely. Why not? Just show up. Steve at the Magic Barn seems like a very inviting individual, and I'm sure he'd be glad to have you. No, and one of the things that struck me when you were saying what you're saying is for you to say that, to get to a place in life where you say, I want to play with the guy that's writing driven, that means you have had to attain a certain level of humility. That's what that means. You're a humble drummer. You're saying it's not all about me, and it's about a team. Like that's another part of growing up, is like figuring out how to work in a team, mm-hmm. where you can accept the people around you as flawed. Like every song I write's not going to be killer, and every beat or bass line or everything else that people play isn't going to be knock your socks off either. But man, it's really a pleasure. I tell my band sometimes, like, could we just, I don't even want to play out because I really like playing with you guys in the basement. This is fine with me. Like, this is enough. I'm getting what I want, at least out of the music, just from getting this experience with you guys, you know?
Yeah, I believe that. So who were some of the people that influenced you as a singer-songwriter?
Oh, gosh.
Was Dylan?
Tommy Lee. No, I'm just kidding. It's just that when he turns upside down, it's like moves my heart.
Do you remember when he did that show where he went to the University of Nebraska and got on the drum line with those marching band drummers?
No, I don't.
Well, it was like it endeared you to Tommy Lee because here is the, arguably most well-recognized rock drummer of our time, or not even our time. He's not even our time anymore. Let's be honest. He was back when we were young time. Mm-hmm. Point is, he got on with those educated, hardcore marching band kids, and right away, instead of being pouty or petulant or denying how amazing that stuff is, he fell right into it. And the reason the show was great is because he was so self-deprecating about his lack of actual ability to be a technical thing. He's the first guy to tell you, I'm all flash and I do some things well playing the drums, but the reason that people know me is because of my personality and my character, not because of the kind of sticks I use or the type of cymbal setup that I use. And I liked that, it showed that when it meant something, a guy could look at himself honestly and assess his skills.
That's cool. Yeah.
I think that was totally cool. And I feel like I'm the opposite. I don't have anything like a Tommy Lee in me. I'm kind of bashful when it comes to, like, if I were to stand up and try to sing a song in front of a band or in front of an audience with a band, I would really struggle. I like being behind the drums. And so the reason that I decided to try the path of ultimately humility, becoming a dedicated member of the rhythm section who did not need, a lot of accolades in order to be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. I'm fulfilled in the rhythm section in the back because I know that when the dance floor fills up, it's because of something that I've done.
That's true. Drums really are kind of running the show.
100%.
I mean, that's the dirty little secret, is that you got the complete control over that room.
Yes. So anyway, I don't have anything rock star in me, so I decided to embrace the other side of the thing. I mentioned playing basketball. I'm a pretty little guy, but I'm really attracted to little guys that have been successful in basketball through, outthinking the bigger guy, or having one skill that they exploit. Maybe they're a crazy lights out shooter. So you can refine, even if you don't feel like I'm not an athletic overly, I don't have natural gifts, but I've refined a couple of things that make me competitive in the situation. I'm not the best drummer you've ever seen, but I've refined a certain mentality that allows me to be very confident in the area that I specialize in.
Yeah, it's
kind of like this table. So this table is both perfect and imperfect, and you did it lovingly as a craftsperson, but ultimately it's a pretty basic table.
It's a basic table.
You're not trying to be
all tables
something,
do a really simple job. They hold stuff up off the floor where you can reach it. That's all they can do.
Yeah.
But no, you asked about songwriting. I really did want to comment about that because it's a fun conversation. I was getting super excited thinking back, and I'm glad you gave me a gap to think. But when I first started getting into songwriting, it was, I was like in junior high, and I realized that, girls got really excited when you wrote songs about them. So that got me hooked really quickly. And
tell me about the first girl you wrote a song about.
I can remember more about the song than the girl. I'm not going to tell you anything about that person. I'm just not going to do it. No, I don't really remember anyway.
What was the song about?
It was sort of like,
your locker's close to mine.
It was the chorus was like, I'm in 7th grade, right? And it's like, if you hear these words, remember. If you hear these words, maybe you will see what you do to me. Yeah, like I was like, that is so awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
That kind of crap sells.
I mean, no, I know it does, right? Yeah,
that's a winner.
The kind of crap gets you laid. Not in 7th grade, but I mean, that's what it takes. Is that kind of crap.
If you repurpose that, you could probably refine that same song over time and have used that.
Oh, I have. I've written the same song many times in different keys.
Aren't they all the same song?
They are.
That kind of song?
That's the other thing the public doesn't realize. It's like, why can these guys, these studio musicians, get in the studio and like play immediately with anything anybody plays? It's like, because it's all the same, really.
That's really funny that you mentioned that. I do a lot of subbing. So I sub for a band, and if the handful of people that realize there's a different drummer engage me, wow, you must have practiced a ton. No, actually, I just showed up tonight. And so I really want to demystify that process. And I always say, look, this is a formula. Popular music is a formula. And there's really only, there's only really a few slots and, things that
Right.
they fit in. So if I don't make it with lick A, lick B or C, as long as you've got them close, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's one of the things I love about songwriting is that even though the underlying structure doesn't vary that much, as you grow as a person, the lyrical content can go all over the place. I mean, that's the thing that really develops over time. But I was young, but I got really into like Paul Westerberg at a pretty young age. He was in the Replacements.
Replacements, thank you.
Yeah, God, he was just a great songwriter. I mean,
Would you call that punk?
Kinda. I mean, it was sort of
Or like
post-punk.
alt-rock before
it was like right on the edge of punk and indie rock, in the 90s when indie rock sort of was ruled the day or whatever. But he was just. I've always been drawn to kind of the melodic pop structures. I guess I like the Gin Blossoms back in the day a lot, and of course when Nirvana and all that stuff. I mean, I like those bands a lot, but I wasn't quite that sad. I was not on heroin either, but I liked what they were trying to do for sure. And
but you're attracted to the melodic more.
Yeah,
the melodic
yeah. I really appreciated that aspect. And as I've aged, I sort of go back to a lot of the same. I like John Hyatt. I like the Jayhawks are a particularly good band. I feel. Lately, I've been listening to a lot of M. Ward. I don't know if you've heard it. Man, he's really interesting.
Like the letter M, Ward.
M. Ward. And my kids too. They're always putting on pop, and so I've had to get into some of the techno stuff. But even some of that, there's like a big difference between really well done techno and really terrible
and
techno. Yeah, all that crap. So I don't know. I just like people who can convey truth in a way there's such an art to distilling universal truths and making a song coherent from the very top to the very bottom, where every line and every word serves a purpose and supports the overall theme. If you can pull that off and make a cohesive thing that maybe moves somebody or draws them in, even if they don't know exactly what you're trying to say, then you win. Like that's what a good song is to me.
And so if I'm playing with someone that is trying to provide material like that in almost any category, what I feel like my role is to like give me a cymbal swell where there's something that wants to change the emotional feel. Like I'm trying to anticipate how you want someone to feel during the course of your song. So the bridge, you probably want a different emotional feel than the choruses or the verses. And there probably is one or two things where you've got a word that you wrote very purposefully because you intend it to mean something. And I want to support your intent. Maybe that's one tom hit instead of just the rest of the boom and the crack. Or maybe the way you're singing it is laid back because the idea of the song is laid back. So I'm going to use a brush on the snare, or I'm trying to adjust little things. That
It's like painting. I mean, it really is. It's like I think about recording and live music too, but even more so recording, where you start with an empty visual field and you just start adding subtleties and until it's balanced, until it looks right, until all the pieces are there. And when is that? And it's like you don't know until you see it and you're like, well, that's it. There it is,
Well, I feel lucky. We don't need to make this about church, but I spent a lot of my formative years playing in church, and one of the things that, if done right, church musicians can do is to really like accentuate the things that are being sung that tend to have more meaning than other times. And I'm lucky that I've been able to create within a church environment that was not uncomfortable with the experimenting of the weird things that I could do or percussion sounds, because you can kind of like get a sense back in real time how you're doing. You can sense the way a crowd might be feeling more emotionally connected to the material and when they're feeling less emotionally connected to the material. And I found that over the years I could, like you said, painting in real like Bob Ross, he'd make those strokes and they looked like gibberish until they looked like the most amazing, like one more stroke and then there it
It's
all
like
is.
boom, suddenly it's like,
Yeah. So I feel lucky in my musical life that I got to spend time in a church environment where I could get that instant feedback and kind of worship centered,
yeah,
music.
yeah. No, I have too, and I've also not somewhat as a drummer too. I was kind of a fill-in drummer at times, but mostly I sang and played guitar and whatever. But that really taught me. I mean, that was a great teacher because you really are interacting with an audience towards a collective purpose, and it's not about you. And
Yep.
if you make it about you, you're doing it wrong, and everybody knows it.
In
And
real time.
a smart pastor jerks you off the stage.
Yeah.
Really. And so you have to learn how to set your ego down and take inventory of who your audience is and try to meet them where they are. You know, you come in on a Sunday and everybody's like, hungover and coughing. They're probably not hungover. Well, but I was. I don't know. But
Why can't you be? I
Well, I
think
don't
in church
know,
in 2017, it's
right.
they'll take whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we should talk about that. I mean, because here's why we should talk about it. I mean, church is so uncool, right? I mean, anybody who talks about church must be a complete, Nancy boy or sold out evangelical conservative, which is
Sap.
You're a sucker if you believe in any of that, except that like all of the great poets and artists and inventors of all time believed in a higher something. But
For sure.
anyway, no, I think it's an interesting conversation because as I've aged, and a lot of these concepts we talked about early on in the podcast, where you're talking about learning the lessons of youth and moving into the second half, when that mentality of like doing the thing you're supposed to be doing so you can get to the thing you want to do plays itself out in church, that can make for some pretty confusing experiences in church because it comes with this sort of overlay of we're right, we're doing it right, everybody ought to be doing it this way, and if they're not, they're going to suffer some consequences. And so there's this sort of this fear element sometimes with it. And then you got all this peer pressure. You got people around you who, they're gonna say something to you if you're
Right.
doing too much. What do you call it? Waxing the. Is that what it's called?
Waxing
The dolphin.
if you're off message.
If you're off message.
How's that?
I like that better. But there's all this kind of like very, very specific behaviors that are okay in that community, and there's specific ways of being, ways of talking, ways of interacting. These are the bands that are okay to listen to. These are the movies that are okay to listen to. These are and this is why nobody likes church.
Right.
Right. This is what all the churches are trying to figure out how to solve, is that, maybe if we just make it a rock show and a TED Talk, we'll get people in there. But they're not fooled. They're still not going.
Right.
So the only way you get people to, I think, really engage in church is that, ultimately God has to show up and move somebody. People really can't. I mean, we're just sort of help that along. But I don't know. I guess for me, I got so caught up in the trying to figure out how to fit in and behave properly in church that I completely lost the forest for the trees, and I had to leave for a while. And I think that might be something I might say to people. It's like, if you feel like church is a drag and you're trapped and you don't know who you are anymore and you're going through the motions and it doesn't mean anything to you, like, for God's sake, stop.
Yeah.
Take a break.
But it doesn't mean stop thinking about those types of things. It doesn't mean stop searching. It doesn't mean stop asking.
Not at all.
It doesn't mean stop staying connected to God. And so many people, when they finally reject church after however many years, they kind of like set the whole effort down.
Right. No,
Because
that's
the
true.
effort was connected to getting up on Sundays, and my collective like spiritual effort was kind of like weekly based, and so now like that weekly tether is not there, so it's easy to like not consider any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think what has to happen is you have to develop your own reasons for doing it. If you're doing it for anybody else besides you and God, then it's going to ultimately run out of steam at some point. And it did for me. And it's been something that I've wrestled with a great deal over time, and still don't know exactly how to proceed, because I do think, I mean, the flip side of this coin is it's like, hey, come on, everybody. Why are we judging church so harshly? I mean, it's just people. I mean, look at the government. Look at the, the all the institutions around us are corrupt as all get out. And church is too, to a large degree sometimes, but gosh, they're at least trying to go about something from a code of like not being selfish and trying to love people. Yeah. I mean, like, God, can we cut them a little bit of a break too?
100%. I've been married, I don't know, maybe close to 26 years, but 25 years this past March. The guy that married us was our pastor in our church for a long time, and my wife's pastor since she's a little girl. And he remains to be one of the most decent people I've ever met.
Right.
And he has hurt me and he has hurt her in such a profound way from his lack of ability to see some of the things that were going on and his unwillingness to act on those things. And yet he's easy to forgive because he's a decent, genuine, he's never screwed anybody. He's never professed to be something that he wasn't. He was just a guy whose church got bigger than his pastoral gifts could accommodate. And now when some HR functions were needed and some higher level, management was needed.
Exactly.
He was totally not that kind of leader. He was a pastoral leader of a small church. So I think, and that all comes down to something that, as your organization grows, if you're a church, you better have the right people in place to keep it from becoming a cold institution.
Yeah, no, I got bit by that exact same thing because I was married in most of my formative church years, and my marriage began to fall apart while I was going to a church. And right, so we're starting from this premise of grace, mercy, forgiveness, and humility, and but we're going to go ahead and take sides. And people that I've known for years, we're not going to look you in the eye anymore.
It's called populist grace and humility.
Populist,
situational,
exactly.
Conditional. Yeah.
And I think that's something the church often misses. Is like, as a psychology-minded person, there's a lot of drives that hold these groups together that are very human and ancient. You don't want to stand out as being. You don't want to be a whistleblower. You don't want to make waves. Otherwise, you're going to get rejected by your group. And that's what happens is then people commit these sins of omission. It's not like they start persecuting you. They just they stop speaking up when they should. Really, is what happens. And that's painful too. Like when you're looking around and it's a betrayal, really. When you see people that you thought. You knew and loved you. Now, granted, if anybody from that church community listens to this, I'll be the first to tell you, when I was doing all of my reeling, I did not stick the landing by any means.
You were a little messy in the process.
Oh my God, I can understand why somebody wouldn't have wanted to talk to me, but it was also very hurtful at the same time. Like when people basically choose sides and made it very difficult. I mean, I was a songwriter, right? And they stopped like playing my songs in church. They're like, we're going to blot him out from, having existed.
You've been
here.
redacted, right?
Yeah. I'm like, gee, many Christmas.
I get that.
Yeah. Like this is okay. My God, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah. Okay. So, my story is we had a very energetic, very central music figure who was the person that opened up this ability for me to become a much better musician. We collaborated personally, professionally, part of me getting better in that process because I felt like this is really where God wanted me. And, I felt like this is a spirit-led. I'm supposed to get better at drums so that I can become a more effective person in this particular environment. Then he was let go for something that he did that was not good at all. And then ultimately he left town. And what left with him was everything good that he had brought to the culture of that church. So what they did in his place is install somebody that is a much more robotic, just push play kind of a worship leader. So, it's like church tends to get rid of messy things. Church tends to get rid of the creative element because creative people are messy. And then
Dangerous.
What happens is that they're left with all the predictable people.
I know it.
that need to be inspired to be more creative, really.
Right.
So I understand.
It's like
what
we
you're
ought to
saying.
take all those people and make them go to art school and take all the art students and put them in a church and see what happens.
MBA program. Like, you guys need to tighten up and you guys need to loosen up.
Exactly. I mean, in church fundamental, it's like from a personality perspective, church tends to select for people disproportionately who are rules-minded, like kind of linear thinkers a little bit more, in the box, behave yourself. That's who ends up there in those groups. It's not that you guys are all better. It's
Right.
just that you're all drawn to the same way of doing business, really.
And so I became a Christian. I'm early 20s probably, and so my wife drugged me there as a teenager, and then we kind of like moved through that process. But what I was attracted to was the system. Oh, there is a system in place, but whereby I can learn how to become a better person, increase my depth of knowledge about things that are like ancient. And that was all good. Oh, and also they'll help watch my kids, and also,
It's a social group,
it's a social group,
friends.
Yeah, yes.
And
So definitely for early development, for many years, I was very into the system of maybe because that's how you're doing it right. I seem to be fitting within all the systems. As I got more mature, I realized that I don't need to rely on this system in order to feel like there's a connection there between me and the creator of the universe. I feel like maybe they keep telling me it's a personal thing. Well, when I really started to refine what I felt as a personal connection, these became less and less important to help me focus on that personal connection. So I didn't need them. And the less that I needed them, the more people needed me to need them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, you're exactly right. And I have to throw this back a little bit at, because there's a crowd of people that are always just like, I don't need to go to church to find God. I go on a hike, and that's all I need to do. It's like, okay, right, I understand that. And it is true that if there is this ultimate good, and he's the pinnacle of good and love and everything we can't possibly imagine perfect in every way, he doesn't need you to do anything to love you, right? He doesn't need you to be anywhere. He's not mad at you. Like, God is not mad at you, right?
Yep.
At the same time, those people, what they're also saying is, I think it's covert language, or it's sort of like saying, I don't want to have to be around people and show people who I am and work through my stuff, basically.
Yep.
And a good church, and a lot of what a really good church is about, is helping people grow and develop emotionally in a group setting. And that's a really effective way to do it. And if you just write the whole thing off, I mean, you're going to miss out on a big part of what it means to form up as a complete and whole individual, as I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And back to something we touched on earlier is like the humility. The humility of me finding beauty in the boom and the crack on the bandstand is the same humility that I was taught in church, that, man, my heart is black.
Right.
So
I'm full of snakes up here.
I can do as many good things as I want, but what I think, and wow, if it's really true that kind of what you think is really who you are, then I'm pretty ugly. So you can't go hiking and realize what an ugly person that you are in your soul from a hike.
And that is so important. And it's sort of like there's a contradictory message in psychotherapy and Christianity in one way. We're trying to convince everybody that they have value and they're not terrible and they're good and all this, and people have all this self-loathing and everything. And then Christianity comes along and says, you know what, you got some something's rotten in Denmark. You got
You have
some
a false sense of yourself.
Yes, you got some rats inside you. And in my estimation, that turns out to be more helpful because it's closer to the truth. It's not that we're all one or the other. It's that we are actually full of the capacity to commit deep atrocities. We're not harmless. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're not okay. We did not come out of the womb fine.
Yep.
We're not fine. We have the ability to murder and kill and rape and pillage. Oh, I'd never do that. Yeah, but would you think it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you'd think it, what does that mean? When you trace that thought back all the way to its very core, how are you any different, really? Mm-hmm. And I think this is where the scripture where he's like, if you're angry, you've committed murder. If you lust, you've committed adultery. Because what he's saying is, if there's any speck of impurity in you, then we can't use you in the recipe the way you are, because you're going to ruin the batch. We got to clean you first, and that's the real power of the gospel. It's like saying, yeah, we know that there's a fix here, and this is what allows you to sort of reconcile yourself to the Creator, but you got to know that you're a created, loved entity, and also that you're capable. I mean, you have been the crucifier, right? You have been the Pharisee. You have been Cain. You have been the prodigal son. You have been every single character throughout the course. You've been Pilate, who was merciful until it wasn't politically expedient anymore. You've been all of those characters at some point or another. And you don't necessarily see that in yourself until you've lived a while and put yourself in group situations. And but then when you get that, then you can forgive people for real. Like, you can really understand and have compassion for the people around you. And so it's not that you become aware of your sinful nature and you become lost and you go shoot up a playground. You become compassionate is what happens. You become wise, and you embrace the spectrum of what you are, from the very most evil parts of you to the very most loving and amazing and beautiful created parts as well. And that's what makes a whole wise human being.
So, church teaches you all that stuff, kind of like Neil Peart taught me a bunch of flashy licks, and only after I adopted those flashy licks and could actually perform them could I see why it was wise to set them down and in favor of something more basic. So to me, and I'm not a good Christian, neither are you. I mean, let's set that aside. I'm not sort of like setting up my lifestyle, but the example that I draw here is I have confidence in my boom and crack, not because it's the only thing that I can do, but because I can do so many other things that I've realized the value of why I choose to do this. And so in this Christian life that I'm trying to lead, badly at times, only after I've studied up enough on how to be a judgmental Christian, how to set up a system about how to learn more about my faith, how to learn about who Pilate was and what value he had, could I only go, oh, those guys are me. Set that aside, make a choice to be something slightly different. So being a technician is a less mature thing. Being somebody that understands how to do the technique but chooses to do something that's more effective is, to me, a better way. It's a more simpler purpose. It connects with more people more easily. You're not as threatening. You're more approachable. You love easier. I don't know if that comparison means anything to you.
Totally no. I mean, you get to a place where you don't need anybody to know what you're capable of, like from a talent perspective anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and paradoxically, that's when you get noticed, kind of. You know, it's sort of like the way you carry yourself.
Well, you did invite me to this podcast.
Exactly. I mean, it was not just your bald head and these great lights and all that together in one winning combination. No, I mean,
that's why we connected, because we both seem to have that curiosity sort of about things.
It's a great discussion, and I think, you know, just sort of putting that topic to bed, I want to reaffirm that, you know, church is I think has done more good than harm by far.
I don't know, the higher learning community in our country, the medical community in our country, most of that stuff fundamentally has come from, I mean, John's. How many colleges are named after saints? Those are religious organizations at the beginning. So whatever bad things they do, they've educated people throughout the history of our country.
Right. You sort of don't just get to throw it out.
The
institution's
as irrelevant. Done some pretty
like,
decent things.
Yeah. Not to mention, like, our whole entire justice system was founded on philosophical principles derived
for example.
from, you know, I get that. And I know that there'll be postmodernist, atheist, humanists listen to this. God bless you. And I
are we going to get comments? Am I a part of something that's going to get comments?
Well, and here I am trying to be a people pleaser and be all things to all people now. But my point was that, you know, church is, I'm not really trying to say, you know, like church is defunct. I am saying, though, that if it's not serving you and it's dragging you down, you might want to change your patterns with it. And I'm also saying that if you're avoiding it because you're judging it based on what the media tells you ought to be thinking about it, then you're just as judgmental and closed-minded as any of the Christians you're imagining.
Yeah, as somebody that's recently trying to like de-emphasize Facebook, there's some similarities. For every bad thing that goes into my Facebook news feed, there's a half a dozen good things. And the more I focus on the bad thing, the less fun I'm going to have on Facebook. Church has a bunch of bad things, but there's so many good things about it. And the people that weird you out when you go there don't have to define your experience there.
Right.
Go there, smile or don't, and try to get something out of what's being sung and then what's being spoken to, and then see if it resonates. And that doesn't have to have anything to do with anybody else that you run into, as weird as they may be, and as most assuredly
By the
they
way,
will be.
You're weird.
Right.
You're the weird one. I mean, it's like, why is this guy who's like coming up to me, shaking my hand with a big smile, trying to make me feel welcome? Why is he the freak? Why is that freaky?
Right. Yeah. Why?
You know?
Yeah. 100%. Like, why do I have to feel the need to take my coffee cup in because this is my identity, and this is, the church is not going to take my identity from me. And so now I'm just this kind of like stubborn Christian that when I go tends to have stubbornness in my heart, and I'm not working on that
you're
too.
not. No, I mean, yes, we're all working
for good reason, but ultimately I'm just trying to stay soft and not harden on those attitudes.
But the church needs people like you and probably like me too to run our mouths a little bit and participate in the process.
Well, we don't want to see it burn. We want to see it get better.
Yeah, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater at all.
Definitely, there is a contingent that wants to see it go away. Well, that would be really terrible for the world.
I think it would be.
And it's never going to happen anyway.
No,
I mean,
it's not going to happen.
Those people are on Facebook where a lot of people that have the genuine face aren't.
Yeah.
And
in fairness to the people who are very offended by church, that they may have been deeply hurt and they may have been offended in real ways.
Yep.
I certainly have been hurt in church, as have you've mentioned. And so I don't want to invalidate any of those feelings. I would just ask you though, have you ever asked yourself why really? Is this about church, or is this about you needing to be oppositional for oppositional's sake? Is it about you not wanting to look uncool in front of your circle? What is it exactly that would cause you to pick on this particular institution over and above many others?
Right.
So I'll leave it at that. That's my soapbox.
We covered a lot of topics.
Man, what time is it?
Oh, I never set my clock back. It's noon.
What time is it? 10:30. Okay, well, you know what? I have to go because I have to go be a psychiatrist. I could sit here all day though.
You think I could get a script, bro, before we go?
What do you like? Fentanyl?
Oh,
Adderall?
no.
Xanax?
That stuff scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, don't take that. Yeah.
What's like why and how and what are we going to do to fix it? And that's another podcast.
Dude, everybody hates themselves and so they're trying to feel better. That's what they're doing. Everybody just is like nihilists, and then opiates make it better for a little while. Like
church will help that.
They kind of
even if you're judgmental.
It sort of would help. Yeah. It sort of would help that.
Well, I don't want to end on a dour note. I've really loved this.
Oh man, it's been fabulous. This is so much fun. It's like if you have an idea about doing something creative, like building a table and an infinity wall and recording your stupid mug and putting it up for the world to see, like just do it.
Yeah.
Why not? What do you have really that's any better to do with yourself?
And I've seen a lot of bad internet videos, so you can't out bad what's on the internet. Whatever you put out there is probably better than some of the junk that's out there.
Oh man, I sit in my bed at night and listen to bad YouTube over TV. Like I'll just turn off the lights and listen to it, and that's better oftentimes than anyway.
TV is bad. You're right.
Yeah, TV sucks. Anyway.
Well, I feel like I'm the guy that got the first high score. Like, you're going to have other guests, and they're going to compete.
It's going to stand for a while.
You think?
It's definitely going to be in the top 5 for, I would say, a couple of years.
Well, I hope it increases my brand. That's very important. Are we going to have meta tags in this?
What's a meta tag?
I heard somebody that knows about computers talk about it.
I have some skin tags. Is it like that? All right. Hey, thanks for listening to The Heartache Connoisseur. You can find us on social media. My name is Dr. Martin Carpenter. I do have a psychiatric practice in the Iowa City area. And please feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the podcast. tell your friends if you find this interesting. Share the links and do all that. We really appreciate it. And we're trying to help. We really are. So thanks for helping me today, Jamie. Appreciate it.